Presented and produced by the National Public Housing Museum, this is Out of the Archives, an oral history podcast created from interviews with public housing residents from across the United States. I'm your host this episode, Mark Jeschke. The stories in this episode span from 1943 to 1993. For a full list of sources, please check the episode notes in your podcast platform. As a part of the museum's mission to amplify the stories of public housing residents from across the country, we're revisiting some of our early episodes, sharing greater historical context and cultivating a deeper understanding of the experiences of public housing residents. This episode, Bring the Outdoors In, Community and Recreation in Public Housing, originally aired on April 30th, 2020, shortly after the start of the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown. Needless to say, this period would require the world to drastically reimagine how we interact while keeping our neighbors and broader communities safe. Thinking back to those first few weeks of the pandemic, one of the most immediate and disarming changes was not being able to commune with our friends, family, classmates, and colleagues. We shared this episode with that mentality in mind, hoping to bring listeners closer to what was familiar to them. Now, over 3 years later, we're still living with the ever-rippling effects of the pandemic. But through those ripples, we've also shown how adaptable we can be, finding creative ways to convene, play, and find joy with our communities. In that spirit, we present these stories about play and recreation in public housing. Our first narrator, Betty Howard, who lived in the Cabrini Green homes and later in the Lathrop homes between 1958 and 1967, shares her memories of moving into a new home and the fun she found as she settled in.
From the Wyndon Hotel, we got this opportunity to move into the new CHA housing project, Cabrini, which, like I said, when we arrived there, everything was brand new. Brand new refrigerator, and we'd moved from a dump. I mean, I remember seeing one time a rat as big as a cat go in the kitchen. It was the worst possible conditions. So moving into a brand spanking new apartment with new playgrounds, and they had those turtles, that you could ride, these stone turtles and the barrels. I don't know if you've ever seen, the playgrounds they had at the projects, and swings and monkey bars and everything brand spanking new.
Playing is usually a bit more fun when you have friends to laugh and imagine with. One of the recurring themes we've heard in countless interviews and noted in many episodes is how many public housing residents see their neighbors as more than just neighbors. Tommy Woods describes this dynamic as he reflects on his childhood. Tommy, who lived in the Lathrop homes from 1966 to 1983, has been and still is an active organizer of Lathrop Strong. Lathrop Strong is a community group of current and former residents that support its people through reunion gatherings, potlucks, free school supplies, and more.
Everything I know about growing up was at Lathrop Homes at 2707, where it initially started. And growing up was a childhood dream. Multiple friends, many friends, friends of different ethnic backgrounds, friends with different languages, friends with the doors open, whereas I can go to any one of my friends' home to eat, to play with their family, go on trips with them to the lake front, go to the mall with them. So growing up was an adventure. Inside the Lathrop homes, we look at each other as family, extended family members, whereas any sibling that have a discretion can yell and fight per se among themselves. But outside of the neighborhood of Lathrop homes, no matter what or where you are, that bond, that union with your friends was instilled that we are family. And I can be anywhere in the city and see another Lathrop Homes resident, and right away that family bond is enriched. Whereas, hey, that's my brother over there. Hey, that's my sister over there. We have a commonality, a bond like no other.
Many forms of play also involve competition, and every sports fan knows that this can sometimes lead to intense, even physical confrontations. But team activities in particular can also lead to unexpected alliances and even respect. Our next narrator is Philip Ayala, a self-identified Hispanic man who lived in the Jane Addams homes from 1951 to 1957. He shares a complicated story of racial tension that was prevalent in the Little Italy neighborhood when he lived there.
We were always playing some sport in Madill. After me and my brother had a couple of confrontations, we had to fight our way out of school. But we never ran. And I think that it's that situation is you gain, respect. You don't run. You fought and you lost, or. And once we did that, a lot of the Afro-American kids accepted. We became friends. And some we never became friends. Yeah. And we used to play ball after school. At Madill and one of the lots, and we played against each other. We choose teams, and then we got to know them and they got to know us, and there was kind of an acceptance,
When we better understand why and how these long-held tensions arise, we are better equipped to navigate and even transform them. This is an essential step towards building a community of diverse people with different backgrounds, perspectives, and skills. Our next narrator, Janetta Pegues, who lived in the Abla homes from 1960 to 1989, shares a story about how some of her favorite childhood memories are rooted, pun intended, in the aftermath of her mother's Great Migration journey. For those not familiar, the Great Migration was a mass exodus of black folks leaving the intense racial violence in the South for the supposed promised land of equality in northern cities. Spanning from 1910 to 1970, the Great Migration completely reshaped many northern cities, including Chicago, which went from 2% black to 33% black by the time the Great Migration was over. Though individuals and families alike had to make major changes to assimilate into urban life, black migrants maintained a few familiar home comforts from down south: recipes, songs, and even seeds to plant in their new gardens.
My mother, of course, came up from the Great Migration from Arkansas, and although she was a city woman to the core, there was always a country part of her. So we had a garden, flowers in the front yard, and vegetables in the backyard. And she actually took a class with the university, Circle Campus, on how to be a better gardener. So I still have that certificate. Yeah.
Can you describe that garden a little bit more? What was in it? What you grew?
Flowers, definitely greens, tomatoes, what else? I think carrots. But I mostly remember the greens because that's what I liked. If it wasn't something that I didn't like, I wasn't interested in it. So I loved greens. Yeah. I was always like a picky eater, and only certain things I would like to eat. But I remember that, and I remember beautiful flowers. And the neighbors, too. One of the neighbors, Miss Smith, that lived across the way, every year she would have exotic flowers. I couldn't tell you the name of them, but the flowers are pretty, and she tended them, very lovingly. You'd always see Miss Smith out, tending her garden.
From cultivating crops to cultivating community, the joy in Janetta's early experiences in Chicago can be seen reflected in New York City by our next narrator, NPHM's board chair, Sunny Fisher. Sunny recalls her memories of exploring nature, playing with friends, and her first educational mentor.
I remember vividly playing in this playground that was built. It was funny. The trees were very spindly because they were new trees, and they surrounded this playground. But the playground was made out of asphalt ground, and then we had these huge barrels, yellow and black barrels that painted stripes on it. Now they would never do something like that because it was too dangerous. And in fact, I had many scrapes. It bloodied my face when I fell off of them onto the asphalt ground. But they were so much fun, and they really sparked creativity. The kids that I played with would play cowboys and Indians, and we would. There was a maze that we made into our ranch. There was a library in the development as well, and the librarian there, whose name who I still remember, his name was Jerry Goldman, and I'm talking more than 60 years ago. And he would be, and he was probably as influential or more than my teachers in developing my intellectual interests and capacities, because he'd always have books for me when I'd come in. He let me into the adult section when I was only 10 years old. He was just a wonderful man. And there was also a lot of youth development programs. And I remember actually becoming a leader, such as it was, of this girls group that we were in, where we would learn all sorts of things. We would sing, we would dance, we would read, we would do all sorts of things. And I think it was my first experience with that kind of group activities.
Of course, these are just some of the many forms of recreation and play that have been seen across the long history of public housing in America. From teen dances at the William Mead Homes Housing Project in Los Angeles, California, to hula hoop contests held at the Chicago Housing Authority, you can learn about all sorts of fun that has been had and still can be had in public housing across the country by visiting our new blog at nphm.org/blog/fun. This episode of Out of the Archives was curated, written, and edited by Mark Jeschke and Liu Chen. The episode was mixed and mastered by Seth Engel. The theme song for Out of the Archives is titled Born of the Blues, written, performed, and recorded by former Stateway Gardens resident Keith Hudson. Out of the Archives is made possible through the generous support of the Illinois Arts Council Agency, the Kresge Foundation, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, and the Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. We'd like to give one last huge thanks to our oral history narrators, Betty Howard, Tommy Woods, Phil Ayala, Janetta Pegis, and Sunny Fisher, as well as the oral historians who recorded their stories, Hannah Barg, Shakira Johnson, Alexis Judah, and Francesco De Salvatore. For more oral histories, check out the other episodes of Out of the Archives at nphm.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to sharing more stories with you soon.